Hey everybody, it is Dak here from the Ed Boys, and welcome to my Zulrah guide. Zulrah is a high-level, solo-only boss located out in the swamp. The boss has a pretty tough learning curve, but it's a very consistent moneymaker that's always available to grind out, and you can now use melee to fight Zulrah. In this guide, I will start with the requirements for fighting Zulrah, then we'll go over all the different gear and inventory setups for the snake. We'll talk about how to travel there, then the base mechanics of the fight. I'll show you an example of each of the 4 rotations that Zulrah goes through, and then some tips and tricks for the fight, just like what to focus on since there's a lot going in there your first time. Finally, we'll discuss the loot that you can get from this boss. This guide will be pretty long since there's a lot to talk about. As always, there will be chapters on your timeline to skip to whichever part that you need. I will also be uploading a couple full hours of Zulrah that'll be like more straight up examples of Zulrah kills, and those will be linked in the description. The first requirement for Zulrah is Regicide. You don't actually have to complete the Regicide quest, just far enough in that you reach Port Tyrus. You can now fight the snake with melee, magic, or range, but whatever style that you go for, I would suggest having 80 plus in those stats. You can no doubt kill Zulrah with lower than 80 range or magic, or like lower than 80 defense and whatnot. It's just going to be a bit more of a pain, especially while learning the boss mechanics. It's always better to train these main combat stats. For your prayer level, you do need a minimum of 40 prayers so that you can use protect from magic and range. Getting 74 prayer and unlocking rigor is huge, and then 77 prayer and unlocking augury is very nice too. Even just the Royal Titan's prayers are a solid upgrade. If you're using melee, getting 70 prayer and unlocking piety is very good for melee DPS. Let's go over the different gear setups for Zulrah. You have a lot of options, and I'm going to start with the setups that don't really involve gear switches. These setups are not as budget friendly and potentially not what you're looking for as a beginner, so I will briefly go over the different options for these higher tier weapons, but then as I normally do, I will break down each gear slot from best to worst option for magic, and then we'll have a small range switch in the inventory section. Jagex has updated it so you can use halberds to reach Zulrah, and you can use melee to fight the snake now. The Noxious Halberd is basically required for this, but it can be matched up with a Crystal Halberd as your special attack weapon. You're going to want to fill in your best melee gear. Obviously, like Torva, Oathplate, and Bandos is not required. Actually, my first couple kills that I got to try with melee was during a budget money-making video where I had the Noxious Halberd, but I was rocking like Torags and Dragon Plate Legs, overall very weak filler gear, and immediately I was still impressed with how quick and simple the kills were. I have put up a few setups on the screen for different budgets. Feel free to pause and read through any of them. In your inventory for melee, I do suggest bringing the Eclipse Atlatl to help you reach Zulrah without standing in the Venom. That doesn't happen very often that you need to do that, but it is nice to have. And since you won't be using fire spells, you should be on the Arceus spellbook and bring runes for thralls. That would be blood runes, fire runes, and cosmic runes. This means that you'll need the Book of the Dead as well. Death Charge is another very helpful spell on the Arceus spellbook. When you use Death Charge, you'll gain 15% special attack energy the next time you kill an NPC, in the next 60 seconds that is, and you can get double Death Charge from fighting Yama as well. Death Charge does require death runes and soul runes. If you bring aether runes, those are soul runes and cosmic runes combined, and they do make it possible to fit both resurrect thralls and death charge runes in one imbued pouch. I won't necessarily be focusing on melee Zulrah in this guide, but I will be uploading a full melee Zulrah hour, one of those hours that's linked in the description. If you have a Tumeken's Shadow, you can bring that with your best magic setup and then get some very quick kills without any gear switches. Max range is still stronger against the blue Zulrah, so technically you'll get even faster kills by bringing the range switch, but mage only with a shadow is extremely viable for a chill money-making method and like a mutagen or a pet hunt. You don't need max mage gear outside of the shadow, but the Tumeken's Shadow triples all of the stats from your other magic gear, so mage gear upgrades are very powerful for the stat stick. The Twisted Bow and the Bow of Farad'n, also known as the Bofa, are both great options for range, and they are powerful enough that you could skip bringing a mage switch and still get some solid kills. The Twisted Bow is more powerful than the Bofa, but also significantly more expensive. Don't let that fool you though. If you do have a Bofa, it's still a very good weapon. Technically, a max mage setup is still going to out DPS these range weapons when Zulrah is green and orange. So again, if you can bring switches, it is more beneficial, but just like the Shadow, these weapons can give you some chill, pretty quick kills without having to bring gear switches. Personally, if I'm going to go for no switches, melee Zulrah is the way now. Melee Zulrah is a lot of fun. But from a technical standpoint, you could kill Zulrah with just a Twin Flame Staff or even a rune crossbow. The kill would be fairly slow, and it might take you a bunch of tries if it's your first kill and you don't know how to do the boss, but having millions of GP worth of gear is not a requirement to start Zulrah. Here's a more beginner-friendly setup. I prefer to wear my magic gear there and then bring a couple range switches in the inventory. Let's go over these gear slots and go from best in slot down to the worst option I would go for each. If you happen to get a Zulrah Slayer task, then the imbued Slayer helm, or at least an imbued Black Mask, is best in slot for your helm. If you don't imbue the Black Mask at Nightmare Zone or Soul Wars or other various options, it won't give you the Slayer task boost for magic and range. From there, Ancestral is best in slot, followed by a much cheaper Virtus mask. A Serpentine helm is not great for mage stats, but it does make you immune to venom, which is very convenient for this fight, so it is a popular option. We then have the Blue Moon helm, an Aram's hood, a Bloodbark helm, and the lowest I would go is a Mystic hat. I will give a quick shout out to Void gear, since it can be nice for bringing less switches. Void Mage is pretty underpowered, and there's better ways to go for less switches in my opinion, so it's still a viable option, but I wouldn't go for Void. In your cape slot, an Imbued God Cape is best in slot, followed by the regular God Cape. The Mage Arena quests where you receive these capes are out in the wilderness, but they are very worth grinding out. After that, you could go for your best Arty cloak that you have, and technically a trimmed skill cape still has some decent stats on it. In the next slot, the Occult necklace is best in slot, followed by the Amulet of Fury, and then a simple Amulet of Glory. The Fury and the Glory are second and third best for range as well, so wearing the Amulet of Fury is not that bad for not needing an amulet switch. Your ammo slot does depend on what range switch you bring, if any. If you have no range weapon or something like a blowpipe which holds its own ammo, you could wear a Blessing. If you're rocking a twisted bow or even a magic short bow, amethyst arrows are very powerful and they're a lot cheaper than dragon arrows. If you're rocking the Sunlight Hunter's crossbow, I do suggest the Moonlight Antler bolts, or just the Moonlight bolts. Sunlight bolts are still okay as well. And if you're rocking like a rune crossbow, enchanted ruby bolts are solid, and then I would bring enchanted diamond bolts with me to switch when Zulrah gets under half health. For the mage weapon, like I mentioned before, Tumeken's Shadow is best in slot, followed by the Harmonized Nightmare Staff using your highest level fire spell. The Sanguine Esty Staff and the Trident of the Swamp are very good powered staff options, and their max hit increases if you have a higher magic level. So at high mage levels, these are going to be better than a Twin Flame Staff. With lower magic levels and less filler gear to increase your max hit, the Twin Flame Staff with a Tome of Fire and then using Fire Wave is the way to go. Zulrah is weak to fire spells, and the Twin Flame Staff will shoot 2 attacks at a time if you're using elemental spells, and the second attack always deals 40% of whatever the first attack did. Zulrah also has a damage cap on it. You can't hit any higher than a 50 in one hit splat, but the Twin Flame Staff uses 2 hit splats to do its damage, so it is possible to get over 50 damage in one cast. The Twin Flame Staff is a fantastic weapon for getting into Zulrah, as it does a lot of damage, and it's under the 10 mil price tag at the moment. After that, you could go Aram's Staff with Fire Wave, Trident of the Seas, Ivan's Blast, or even the Warped Scepter. Fire spells are so strong here, though, that if you have a Tome of Fire, I would just use like a Mystic Air Staff and using Fire Wave over the Warped Scepter or Ivan's Blast. In the shield slot, if you're using fire spells, preferably Fire Wave, then the Tome of Fire is a very important piece. When the Tome is charged, it counts as unlimited fire runes, similar to having a Staff of Fire equipped, but in your shield slot. Also, when charged, the Tome will do 10% bonus damage when casting fire spells, and the Tome only uses charges when you're casting a combat spell. You can charge the Tome with Burnt Pages, which are a tradable item received from Winter Todd. You get 20 charges per burnt page. You can also upgrade Burnt Pages to Searing Pages by using 100 Sunfire runes on them. This increases your minimum hit by 10%, which is nice on paper. It's also very expensive, so personally, I just stick with the Burnt Pages for Zulrah. If you're not using fire spells, the Fortified Elidness' Ward is best in slot, followed by the Arcane Spirit Shield, and then the regular Elidness' Ward. You then have the Mage's Book and a Malediction Ward. The Book of Darkness is pretty good for range as well, so you won't need as many switches if that's what you go for. And then the Book of Dead isn't that bad since it's also needed for Thralls. For your Mage top, Ancestral is best in slot, followed closely by Virtus, and then I would go for the Aram's Robe top or the Blue Moon chest piece, which have just about the same stats. Then you have the Dagonhai Robes, Infinity Robes, Bloodbark robe tops, which I rocked a lot of Bloodbark during my Get Rich with Zulrah video, and the lowest I would go is Mystic top. The Mage pants do look just the same as the Mage tops. Ancestral's best in slot, followed by Virtus. Then we have Aram's and Blue Moon, then Dagonhai, Infinity, and Bloodbark, and the lowest I would go is the Mystic robe bottoms. For your gloves, the new Confliction gauntlets are now best in slot, though they're going to be pretty expensive for a while. We then have the Tormented bracelet, followed by Barrow's gloves. Barrow's gloves are good for ranged as well, so they're a good option for less switches. After that, I would just go down the Recipe for Disaster gloves list. You have Dragon gloves, Rune gloves, and Adamant gloves, which have the same stats as a regen bracelet, and then Mithril gloves, which have the same stats as a combat bracelet. Probably goes without being said, but if you are going to use the Void Mage and Range helm, you do need a Void top, a Void bottom, and Void gloves instead of all these other options. For your boots, the Avernic treads are now best in slot, though again, pretty expensive. Then there's the Eternal boots, followed by Arania boots and Infinity boots. The Avernic treads and the Arania boots are also good for range, so they're good for not having to bring switches. In general, a boot switch is really not needed for Zulrah. Guardian boots have a good defense bonus on them, and then when they're charged, they can recoil some of the snakeling spawns, but only the ones that are within melee range. And then you have brimstone boots, which really aren't bad for range and magic, and the lowest I would go is a simple pair of mystic boots. Finally, in the ring slot, pretty straightforward. Rings of recoil are almost required for Zulrah because the recoils will kill the snakelings for you. If you're wearing echo boots, they'll KO some of the spawns, and for speedrunning Zulrah, you would probably rather use a ring that gives more offensive stats, but you're going to be using rings of recoil for grinding Zulrah KC. The Ring of Suffering is best in slot though, because it can hold Ring of Recoil charges, and it has a very high defensive stats and prayer bonus, and you should imbue the Ring of Suffering to double its stats as well. If you have any questions about the gear, let me know in the comments, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Now for the inventory setup, first the range switches. Best in slot for a range weapon would be a Twisted Bow, then a Bofa, then the Blowpipe, which actually can out DPS the Bofa with high tier darts. I have a Sunlight Hunter's crossbow for my weapon here. It requires 66 range and 50 hunter, and I suggest having those Moonlight Antler bolts, though the Sunlight bolts will still get the job done. The crossbow is pretty easy to get your hands on for how good it is. After that, you could do a magic short bow, preferably imbued so that it uses less special attack energy. I've got an Ava's Assembler, though an Ava's Accumulator does get the job done as well. Dragon Slayer 2 is not a requirement for Zulrah. We've got the Ceradomin D'hide top and bottom. Fortified Masori is going to be best in slot. Even regular Masori would be solid, but obviously a bit more expensive. If you're running a Bofa, then you do need to use Crystal Armor. Shout out to the Huey Codal Hide as well. It's got like the same offensive stats as Blessed D'hide, but a little bit more prayer bonus. For a shield switch, the Twisted Buckler is best in slot, followed by a Dragonfire Ward, then an Odium Ward. The Book of Law and the Unholy Book are pretty good shield options. I'm rocking a Blessed D'hide shield for this setup. Obviously, if you're using a two-handed weapon, you don't need a shield switch. If you have a Necklace of Anguish, that is very good for range DPS. As you can see, I don't have any Zenyte jewelry in this setup. Zenyte jewelry is very powerful, but it is not required to get started at Zulrah. The better you get at the Zulrah fight, the more switches that you can go for. Zulrah was actually the first boss that I grinded out where I ended up switching a lot of gear consistently, so I kind of have the snake to thank for learning gear switches. Early in the grind, it's not a bad idea to just bring like a range weapon and an Ava's for your switch, and mostly rely on the Twin Flame Staff for the kill, just to keep it simple. But the more switches you bring, the better for your DPS, and the faster your kills will be. For the potions, I have one ranging potion for range DPS. I have an Anti-Venom Plus to deal with being inflicted with Venom. You don't need an Anti-Venom Plus or an extended Anti-Venom Plus. Even the regular Anti-Venoms are not required. Just a regular Anti-Poison will turn Venom into poison on your first sip, and then cure your poison with a second sip. It's not ideal compared to using Anti-Venoms, but they can be used early on. I have 3 prayer potions for my prayer regen. Your ratio of potions to food is going to change depending on how good you are at the boss. Early on, you might need more food, and then as you start getting longer trips, you are going to need more prayer potions. At the bottom of the inventory, I have my rune pouch. It has blood runes and air runes in there. There are fire runes in there, but my Tome of Fire and my Twin Flame Staff are already accounting for those. These are the runes required to cast Fire Wave. I've got the extra Ring of Recoil for when the one that I'm using currently shatters. If you use a Ring of Suffering, then you don't need the bonus recoil in the inventory. The Ring of Dueling is to teleport to the Ferox Enclave to bank, and the Zulrah teleports are there for traveling to the Snake. Finally, for food, I have mostly sharks, but then I have those 3 carambuans for combo eating. If you click on 2 sharks in a row, like you're only going to eat the 1 shark, and then you have a few tick delay before you can eat another one. But if you were to click on a shark then a carambuan right away, you will eat both at the same time, which can help you survive those range attacks from Blue Zulrah. If you have any questions about the inventory, let me know in the comments, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Let's talk about how to get to the snake. Zulrah is located in the swamp in the Elven area. You unlock this area while doing the Regicide quest. In the town of Zolandra, there is a rowboat that'll take you out to the island where you fight Zulrah. You first need to talk to the priestess and have her agree to give yourself up as sacrifice to the snake. If you die at Zulrah, this lady outside that takes you on the rowboat will have your stuff. Make sure to get it back from her before going in again. There are Zolandra teleports, which are a tradable drop from Zulrah, and they do teleport you right to the center of town, which is super close to the rowboat. There's also a fairy ring code BJS, which takes you pretty close to town, but this does require 76 agility to use, which can be boosted with a summer pie or an agility potion. If you don't have either of those options, you should use the charter ship to get to Port Tyrus and make a run from there. There's lots of ways to get to another charter ship to travel to Port Tyrus. My favorite one is to have the real estate agent move your house to Alderan, and then you can teleport outside your player-owned home and just run over to the docks. A Camelot teleport and running south to the Catherby docks does get the job done too. Once you start getting multi-kill trips, you should consider using the Zulrah teleports. Now let's go over the base mechanics of Zulrah. When you first enter the lair, Zulrah will always pop up green in the center of the U-shaped island, and then during the fight, Zulrah will drop back down into the swamp and pop up in either a green, blue, or orange form. When Zulrah is green, it's only going to use range attacks, unless it's a Jad phase, and it is weak to magic attacks, so you protect from range and use magic on it. When Zulrah is blue, it mostly uses magic attacks, but it can still use some range attacks, and it's weak to range, so you need to protect from mage and preferably attack with range. This phase is dangerous because Zulrah will use range attacks on you that you're not protecting from, and they can hit up to 41 damage. Sometimes the snake will use a few range attacks in a row, and you just gotta eat them. It can be annoying, but it's really the only time the snake gets to fight back. The boss needs something to make you use supplies once you get good at it. When Zulrah is orange, it is weak to magic, so you do want to use mage gear, and then for its attack, it'll target the player by staring at you, and then a couple ticks later use its tail to attack the area that you were standing in. So you need to move a few squares away after the snake targets you, otherwise you're going to take 20 to 30 damage and get stunned in place for a bit. The snake will generally use 2 of these attacks in a row, and you can stand near the pillars to safe spot these attacks as long as there's no venom in your way. Then we have the Jad phase. This Zulrah will also be green, and it's going to alternate between magic and range attacks, and you're going to want to use magic against it. Jad phase is always going to happen once per rotation, and it is predictable, so you always can know when the Jad phase is coming. We'll talk more about this in the rotation section and the tips and tricks section of the guide. To protect from Jad phase, you can switch your prayers when Zulrah bops its head, not when the projectile actually hits you. So when Zulrah starts using the attack, it has already decided if you were protecting from it or not, and you can just switch your prayer. When you're doing this correctly, visually, it's going to look like you're doing it opposite. It's going to look like a range attack hits you while you're protecting mage and vice versa. But what you're doing is just switching to the next prayer as soon as Zulrah uses the attack, and you're already protecting from that one. You're good to go. Now you can switch. Next, we have the Venom. Zulrah will spawn Venom clouds around the arena, and if you stand in these clouds, they will damage you pretty quickly with Venom damage. They won't actually inflict you with Venom, just do a lot of damage while you're standing in it. These are easily avoided by standing in the right places while fighting. It's really these Venom clouds that have you running back and forth around the U-shaped island, since they do force you to stand in certain spots. Finally, we have the Snakelings. Zulrah will occasionally spawn little Snakelings, which will attack you with either a magic or a melee attack. No matter what attack style, their max hit is a 15, which isn't insane, but there will be a few of them spawned at a time, so it can add up, especially if Zulrah's also hitting you with range attacks during the blue phase. The Snakelings only have 1 HP, so they are best handled by wearing a ring of recoil, which will automatically KO them when they hit you. You'll still tank a little damage there, but that's better than trying to attack them individually. To get rid of them, you should never be attacking the Snakelings. If you die to Zulrah, you will spawn at your normal respawn point, and you'll have to go back to that elf that normally takes you to Zulrah, and she will have your stuff. This will be free of charge until you get up to 50k C at Zulrah, then it's going to be 100k per death. There is a Zulrah plugin that you can download on RuneLite's plugin hub. It's really just like an interactive image to show you where you're going to have to stand on the next phase of the rotation. When I was first learning Zulrah, I did have an image of the rotations always up, like ready to help me out, so it can be nice to have this plugin or just like a screenshot of the rotations just to help memorize them. Obviously though, the plugin is not required, it can be nice for the visual. So if you want the plugin, it is on the RuneLite plugin hub, but we won't be using that plugin for any of these examples. Now let's go over those rotations. There are 4 different rotations that Zulrah goes through, and within the first couple changes, you can tell what rotation it is in, and you can tell exactly what Zulrah is going to do for the rest of the rotation. It makes the boss very predictable, and overall, it's mostly just a memorization fight. I'm going to show the visual of each rotation here and what you are supposed to do. It's going to be sped up a little bit so that the video isn't an extra 10 minutes long. If you would like even more real-time examples with live commentary, then check out my Hour of Zulrah videos linked in the description. Each rotation starts with a green Zulrah in the center, so you have your mage gear on, and technically you don't need to protect from the first one since it's not attacking you. When you're learning Zulrah, it's not that big of a deal to have your overhead on when you don't need it. Once you're trying to grind a lot of kills, then saving some prayer points does add up. We don't know exactly which rotation it is until it dives into the swamp, and this time it pops up as a melee Zulrah in the middle, which means we're either rotation 1 or 2. The melee Zulrah will target where the player is standing and then poke its its tail at your feet a few ticks later, so you do have to move along the couple walkable tiles here, and it's going to use that attack twice. After that, a blue Zulrah is going to pop up, so make sure to protect from magic and put on your range gear. The next Zulrah is going to pop up green, but we don't know exactly where yet, if it's going to be on the south or the west side. Either way, you can switch to your magic gear and protect from range, and then make your way to the other side of the island since the venom now allows you to. The green Zulrah popped up south, so we know that we're in rotation 1. We get a bunch of mage attacks here, then it'll drop down and pop up orange in the middle. I run from this Zulrah's attacks here like you normally would do, but actually I could have just stood by this pillar and I would have been safe. Doesn't really matter much either way. Now it drops down and it'll pop up west as a blue Zulrah, so we have to turn on protect magic and put on range gear. The venom has cleared up at this point, so we can start running to the other side of the island, and the next Zulrah is going to be green on the south side, which starts spreading venom where we were just standing. This Zulrah doesn't actually attack you, so you don't have to switch your overheads. Next we have the blue Zulrah on the south side, so switch to range gear and make sure you're protecting from mage. As the venom clears, I make my way across while still getting some range hits in. The next Zulrah is going to be Jad phase on this rotations, and it is going to start with range. So I put on my magic gear and I turn on protect from range, and then spam click the boss a bit until my character starts to attack, and quickly get to my prayers as Zulrah has begun shooting at me. I switch my prayers when I see the snake bop its head using its attack. A few attacks after the venom clears up, the snake is going to start spreading even more venom, and then I run back to the starting point of the fight. Zulrah is going to pop up as a melee Zulrah in the center. After that, he would pop up green and start another rotation. As always, Zulrah starts off as green Zulrah in the center, and it's not going to attack you at first, so put on your mage gear and get some free attacks in while running up northeast. At this point, we're just reacting to what's going to pop up. We see a melee in the middle, so we know it's either rotation 1 or 2, so I keep using magic and running away as it locks in on my character. Whether it's rotation 1 or 2, we know that it's going to be a blue Zulrah in the center next, so I protect from mage and put on my range gear for a few attacks. The next Zulrah is going to be green either way, we just technically don't know the location yet, so no matter what, we put on magic gear and we start to run to the other side. As we see it's a Zulrah on the west side, we know that it is rotation 2. This Zulrah won't actually attack you, so you don't have to protect from range, but as you're learning Zulrah, you'll probably just see the green one and immediately turn on protect range. That is fair. Next we have the blue Zulrah on the south, so switch to your range gear and protect magic. As the venom dissipates, start making your way to the other side. Zulrah is going to start spreading more venom, which will force you up towards the starting location. Then it's going to drop down and pop up as orange. Switch to the magic gear and make sure to move a few tiles each time it targets you. Then we have a green Zulrah on the east side, protect from range and keep using magic. Next we have a blue Zulrah on the south side. You should run across a bit during this since more venom is coming, and the next phase is going to be the Jad phase starting with ranged. So when blue Zulrah drops down, put on protect from range and your magic gear, spam click the boss until you see it attack you, then switch to protect mage and alternate between protecting range and magic for each attack. Eventually Zulrah will spit some venom out instead of a normal attack, forcing you back up to that starting location. It will pop up as orange Zulrah for 2 melee attacks, then it'll pop up as green in the middle, which is the end of the rotation and the start of a new one. So as always, we start with a green Zulrah in the center, and it is not attacking you, so you get some free magic attacks in while you run up to the starting spot. When it first drops down, we're just reacting to what's going to pop up, and when we get a green Zulrah, we know that it's rotation 3. Immediately put on protect from range and start using your magic attacks on it. This is the only rotation where Zulrah hits you immediately after popping up, so it is safe to just default protect from range on that first reaction. As the venom dissipates, you can start to move towards the other side while still getting some attacks in. Zulrah will next pop up as a melee in the center, but it'll first spread some venom attacks across that'll force you to the other side. Dodge the upcoming melee attacks, and the next one is going to be a blue Zulrah on the west side, so you protect from magic and switch to range gear. After that, we do have a green Zulrah on the south side, so we're back to magic gear and protect from range, and you also want to make your way to the other side of the island a little bit. Then we have another blue one on the east over here, so we switch to protect mage and use our range gear. Then we have a green Zulrah in the center, so we have another switch to make, and you want to move back to the west side. This is the only time in this rotation that you're about to have the same color Zulrah twice in a row. You'll notice that this green Zulrah is not actually attacking you though, so you know that the next green Zulrah is going to be attacking you. After that, you get a blue Zulrah in the center, and you'll need to make your way back to the other side. The next Zulrah is going to be the Jad phase of this rotation, and it's going to start with a magic attack. So when this blue Zulrah drops down, I put on my magic gear and protect from mage, and start spam clicking the boss until I see it attack, and then I switch to my protect range and alternate protection prayers, switching every time that I see it bop its head. After the Jad phase, you'll get one more blue Zulrah in the center, and then finally a green Zulrah in the center, which is going to be the end of the rotation and the beginning of a new one. As per usual, Zulrah is going to start green in the middle. You get some free magic attacks while running northeast, and when the snake first drops into the swamp, we don't know exactly what's going to pop up yet, so we're mostly reacting. We get a blue Zulrah on the east side, so we know that it's rotation 4. Switch to protect from magic and put on your range gear and start attacking the snake. It'll spawn a bunch of stuff first, then it's going to start attacking you. As the venom disappears, you can start to move south. The next Zulrah is going to be green on the south side, so switch to protect range and switch to your magic gear. The next one after that is going to be a blue Zulrah on the west, so go ahead and protect mage and switch back to range gear. As the venom dissipates, run to the other side, switch to your magic gear, as the next snake is going to be orange in the middle, which you can safe spot by standing next to this pillar. You don't have to run between like each of its targets and whatnot. Next, we have a green one right next to you, and it is going to be attacking you with range. This is the time in the rotation that you're about to get the back-to-back green Zulrahs, but the next one won't be attacking you as this one is. After that, you're going to get the blue Zulrah on the opposite side, so you do want to start moving over there as the venom dissipates and switch to your range gear. You'll then get a green Zulrah in the middle, and you'll want to make your way back to the other side of the arena. That green Zulrah is going to turn into a blue one in the same spot. If you're running low on food, you can use this pillar to safe spot from the blue Zulrah. I am using it at the moment so that I don't kill the snake before showing the full rotation. The next Zulrah is going to be the Jad phase, and it's going to start with magic. So I put on my magic gear, I spam click the boss until it bops its head for the first time, and then I begin alternating my protection prayers every time it attacks. The next phase in the rotation is another blue Zulrah in the center, and then we have a green Zulrah in the center, which is going to be the end of the rotation and the beginning of the next one. Here are some tips and tricks to remember during the Zulrah fight, just some stuff to have in mind other than just memorize the rotations and you'll be good. On rotations 1 and 2, the ones with the melee in the middle, the Jad phase will be on the west side of the arena and it will always start with range. There will also never be a back-to-back of the same color Zulrah during these two rotations. On rotations 3 and 4, the Serp and Tanzanite rotations, the Jad phase will always start on the east side, the same spot where the Tanzanite or Serpentine Zulrah spawn, showing you which rotation it is, and the Jad phase will always start with magic. During these two rotations, there will be a back-to-back green Zulrah at one point, generally a couple phases before the Jad phase. Only one of the two green Zulrahs will actually attack you, but it is the only time that you'll ever get back-to-backs of the same color. Because of this, it is always safe to assume that you're going to need to change your overhead prayers when Zulrah drops into the swamp, and then if it turns out you didn't need to, you do have time to correct your mistake before getting punished. When you have venom clouds in your way to run across the arena and then they disappear, allowing you to run to the other side, that's usually a sign to start heading that way. In other words, if the venom lets you change sides, do it. In general, the fight has you running back and forth around this U-shaped island quite often, so you shouldn't expect to be attacking from the same spot for more than like 2 phases in a row. Once you get the fight down and you're not taking any avoidable damage, the only dangerous part is the snakelings and the blue phase. The snakelings can be a bit dangerous, but if you keep your health high, they won't be able to stack you out alone. And then Zulrah's magic phase having those sneaky range attacks, it can be annoying at first, but it's literally the boss's only way to fight back, which is totally fair. Just hover over your food during this phase and be extra prepared to combo eat and heal up quickly. Try to eat food and sip on your prayer potions while you're running across the arena and like switching your gear and whatnot. That way you're not wasting time eating food while you could be doing damage to the boss, which would make the fight much longer, and eventually you would use even more food because of that. And finally, I don't normally suggest this for other bosses, but when Zulrah pops up out of the swamp, you probably should spam click the boss a bit when you want to start attacking it again. There's a little bit of time where it'll let you click on the boss before it actually registers your click, so if you just click it once right as it pops up, you may not actually start attacking the snake. Now, what about the loot that Zulrah drops? When you kill Zulrah, it'll always drop some Zulrah's scales and then 2 rolls on its drop table. You can get an empty roll on the table, so you won't always get 2 other items outside of the scales, but that's not very common. Zulrah's regular loot is very solid, especially because of the guaranteed scales and the occasional bonus scales drop. With uniques included, Zulrah's average loot is about 125k at the moment. Your kills per hour will depend on your levels, your gear, and how good you've gotten at the fight. Like when you're first learning, you're really not even thinking in kills per hour when you're just getting your first kill, but then eventually you can grind out a ton of them. 10 kills per hour at the low end is reasonable, and then maxed out gear can pull off like 30 kills per hour, especially with the new melee setup. The trips are long and the kills are short. That's 1.25 to 3.75 mil per hour in loot. Minus supplies could be more like 1 to 3.5 mil GP an hour currently. It's not maxed maxing out at a ton, but it's also not reliant on super rare drops to make some solid profit, so anytime you knock out a couple hours of Zulrah, you'll make some good cash. There is a 1 in 256 chance to hit the unique drop table, and that is on each roll, so closer to a 1 in 128 chance per kill to get any random unique, a 1 in 512 for a specific item. There are 4 drops on the unique table. The Tanzanite Fang can be made into the Toxic Blowpipe with a chisel and 78 crafting. The Toxic Blowpipe is a very fast weapon used in a lot of different PvM content. It fires darts, and it is charged with Zulrah scales. The Magic Fang can be used to upgrade your Trident of the Seas into a Trident of the Swamp, giving it a boosted DPS and a chance to inflict venom. The Serpentine Visage can be crafted into a Serpentine Helm using a chisel and 52 crafting. This helmet needs to be charged with Zulrah's scales, as with the other Zulrah's weapons. The Serp Helm is pretty strong for melee, and it makes you immune to venom while you're wearing it, making it very convenient for the Zulrah fight. Finally, we have the Uncut Onyx on the unique table. This isn't the only way to get an Uncut Onyx in the game, but it could be convenient for Iron Men trying to make their Zenyte jewelry. Zulrah has 2 super rare drops with the Magma Mutagen and the Tanzanite Mutagen. These can be used to recolor your Serpentine Helm. It doesn't give any bonus stats or anything like that, it's just like a prestigious cosmetic upgrade. You have a 1 in 3,277 chance for any random mutagen, or a 1 in 6,554 chance for a specific one. Zulrah does have a pet, the pet Snakeling, which is a 1 in 4,000 drop, and it can be recolored to be green, blue, or orange as well. Finally, Zulrah does have a Jara Swamp at a 1 in 3,000 drop rate. Yum. If you have any questions about the Zulrah fight, let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you're looking for more example kills, be sure to check out the Hour of Zulrah videos that I have uploaded and are linked in the description. Thank you for watching, everyone. If these videos have been helpful, be sure to like and subscribe for more content, and best of luck on your Zulrah grinds.